Hello and welcome to the Racing Room, brought to you by AK Bets. I'm your host George Ellick, and we are going to be reflecting on a busy week at Punchestown, and we'll kick off with that. AK, you've just said to us off air you've been too busy counting in the last 24 hours to do your Twitter feed update for day 5. Yeah, I'm going to drop you in it there. Decent week then.
Yeah, it was very good. It was very, very good. I think for us also, we probably just variance wise, we probably got a small bit lucky as well. Just got a lot of the big calls right, and that doesn't always happen, I suppose. There's probably other bookmakers that have only, from what we've heard, have only won relatively small on the week. So it might not be fully the same across the whole ring. Maybe I'd say every bookmaker won. We did particularly well, to be honest with you. I can't complain. And it was just
Well, it didn't stop you having a moan about your computer going down, your laptop going down on day one and missing.
Yeah, we
missing
missed a 50 to 1 winner, unfortunately. But, yeah, you can't have everything. I forgot about that, actually. Thanks for reminding me. But yeah, no, it's the pressures straight away of on course, computer systems failing and bits and pieces. So, but yeah, it was a brilliant week. Really hot, really sunny. 131,000 and change through the door, I think, over the 5 days. Unbelievable. Like the Friday, as I put on Twitter, is the busiest I've ever seen any racetrack ever from a betting perspective. It dwarfed pretty much anything we've ever had before, and I'm not making that up or elaborating there. Like it was unbelievable. It was like akin to a student day on speed. Really, there was a lot of younger people there, but it was kind of like it was mad. It was
Did
absolutely.
it dwarf Cheltenham on Friday?
I was like, nothing compares, like absolutely nothing compared for us. Like it was off the charts. We did not stop, like genuinely, and we're on the rails, and I have another picture as well. So I've technically got 3 boards up at once. And you're looking one side of the rail, just constantly paying out, or in this case, probably taking bets more. Yeah, it was just it was bananas, absolutely bananas. Our main pitch did over 2,000 bets on the day. And if you just break that down by minute and then you add payouts into it, and you're trying to imagine how much you're actually working. It is work. Like, it was bananas, absolutely bananas.
For those listening who haven't made the trip, and I'm kind of talking for myself here as well. I mean, how easy is it? How good is it? I mean, if you want to fly over and come for a day or two next year.
It's probably slightly different to some of the other ones in Ireland, in the fact that if you go to Leopardstown, you're pretty much staying in Dublin because it's in Dublin. A lot of people probably benefit from a price perspective with Punchestown, in the fact that, God, I'm going to get my Irish geography around now. I think it's 10. It might be Kildare, it might be Dublin. I'm not 100% sure. I'm embarrassing myself there, but it's more further outside. It's definitely outside the M50 corridor. Basically, and people stay in Naas, which has its own racetrack, and I think raced on the Monday as well. So it's a stone's throw from Naas, and I think you probably benefit from non-capital hotel prices. Like we were talking to guys that were there for the 5 days. I've seen messages in reply to some of the stuff saying 5 of us, or a group of 15, I think, said they were going to do all 5 days next year, and just sack off the English festivals. Yeah. I think you're getting to see top horses. And all the top horses are pretty much trained in Ireland these days anyway, so you're not really missing out on much if you're from an English perspective. Yeah, you're just seeing top horses, top action, and you probably benefit a little with this weekend, especially benefiting from the weather. And it's a lot cheaper to stay, eat, and drink, and just getting through the door as well. So it's really appealing.
Yeah, sorry, it's kind of got a question. I'll put it in here now. I'll just read it out. It's from a guy called Guy Dufton. So thanks for responding to the questions, Fred. He just said €27 a day compared to this year's early bird price of £102 for Gold Cup Day is pretty stark. Literally 0 queues for the toilet, no more than a couple of minutes wait at the bar, free car parking, which surprised me, but fair play to them. 10 lads will be doing Punchestown in the future and skipping Cheltenham. So Punchestown is the new.
I don't know, to be honest with you, I don't know any car park in Ireland where you pay for. They just let you park there, as they should as well, to be honest. Like they really just don't rob you throughout the journey. Like you said, the ticket price is really, really cheap. Park anywhere we don't even consider it, I suppose, with Punchestown, but you can go to the toilet and in and out for a pee in like a minute. Like it's genuinely, it's really well done. You just don't get any complaints. There's plenty of room to move around as well, even though it has a big surface area out behind the betting ring, basically, behind the main stand and stuff like that. So you're never crowded really there as well. It's ticks all the boxes.
And it was another week where we were treated to watching the racing blogger in a selfie stick, backing some short price losers, but also not the only man, dominating social media, filming themselves talking about racing. Because AK, you've been doing your Q&As over the last couple of days. Been enjoying them, nice and honest as ever.
Yeah, I try and answer everything as honestly as I can. There'll be some things I can't touch on for commercial reasons or whatever, but try and if anyone asks a question, you might not like the answer, but I'll try and tell you. And yeah, I think that probably goes down well. I'll try and do it a little bit more with the festivals. I'll probably try and do one for each festival or something like that. So you don't want to over-egg the pudding or anything, but yeah, just try and explain your thoughts on a few things, I think.
Tony, we'll get into the racing now. Review loads, of course. We had Punchestown, we had Guineas as well to get through. But a story that's kind of broken just before we hit record on this pod is around a new $15 million global racing league with the likes of Frankie Dettori, Ryan Moore, and William Buick signed up for this. What can you tell us about it?
Literally, like I said, I literally just clocked the story written by Lee Mottershead. I'll just read out the opening par. It's kind of like Racing League and David Power Jockeys Cup times kind of like 10. 12 of the world's leading flat riders, including Frankie Dettori, Ryan Moore and William Buick, have joined forces to create what is being billed as a revolutionary global jockeys league that expected to launch across some of the sport's most prestigious racing venues early next year. So it goes on to say who's behind it.
Who is behind it?
Behind it is, I think, the ex-Godolphin man, Mr. Ferguson. Signed up to a venture that has been co-founded by BHA board member and former Godolphin chief executive John Ferguson and Lachlan Fitz, a senior figure within Payne's Australian and New Zealand business from 2018 till earlier this year. I don't know how this stacks up against all the other kind of like initiatives that are currently going on, but it sounds like all the jockeys are going to have their own financial interest in their own team, and they're looking for sponsors for each team. So, AK Bets, pick your jockey.
Yeah, I think I'd rather shit in my hands and clap, to be honest with you. Yeah, no. Good luck. Good luck to you if you're putting your own money in, fair play. But there must be some deals done behind the scenes and to make this worthwhile in other ways, because who cares?
Well, it's a kind of like, obviously a lot of the tracks involved are Whirlpool tracks as well, and Ryan Moore's a Whirlpool ambassador, so there could be some conflict with other like initiatives. But like I said, it's for punters, it's of no bearing whatsoever, is it?
Yeah.
Indeed. We'll get to the racing now, and we'll kick off with what was an unbelievable weekend for Godolphin, winning both the Guineas, 2,000 Guineas and 1,000 Guineas over here, but also over here in the States as well. TC.
Yeah, just reading out just the roll call of the winners they've had. They probably had the best few days in their history. They won the Kentucky Oaks on Friday with good cheer. Then they won the Kentucky Derby with sovereignty. And then obviously they had the Guineas 1-2 with Ruling Court and Desert Flower over the weekend at Newmarket. Yeah, it was just a phenomenon. They had 7 other winners in the last 3 or 4 days. Some really impressive ones like Cinderella's Dream. And obviously the Charlie Appleby was responsible for most of them, but Saib bin Saror, who's really been downgraded about the horses he sent, he had 2 horses running and they both finished 4th in both Guineas at very big prices. So just an absolutely stunning weekend for those.
Yeah, looking at the 2,000 Guineas first, where we saw Ruling Court win relatively impressively. A lot of talk about Field of Gold and the ride of Kieran Schumacher as someone who'd backed Field of Gold at a fair price. It was frustrating to say the least. What did you make of it, Tony? What did you think? I mean, a lot of criticism often is going to be the way, especially when a horse is fast finishing second. But it just looked as if Shu gave the winner first run.
Yeah, I think he did an interview with Matt Chapman on Sunday. Matt's one of his biggest cheerleaders, so it was never going to be too much of a pressing interview. But he was honest and said, "Look, if I had my time again, he'd have gone earlier." I think that's clear to everybody. But at the time, I don't think you can really blame him because he seemed to be travelling all over the winner. But like I said, if he had his time again, he would have gone much earlier and he would have won. If they have a race again, like maybe at Royal Ascot and St James's Palace Stakes, Field of Gold will be a clear favourite to there. The reaction on social media wasn't helped by the fact that I think it was ITV that interviewed John Gosden immediately after the race. Clearly was absolutely fuming. So that probably added a bit of fuel to the fire, like I said. But no, I wouldn't really go hard on him there. And it's interesting to bring it back to betting again. I'm assuming it's correct because Chris Fawcett's normally very, very good with these stuff, and it just goes to show you the decline in the exchange of liquidity. And like I said, Chris knows his stuff, and this would have been accurate because these are the kind of thing he tracks. In 2010, there was on the Betfair win market there was £5.3 million match, but on Saturday there was only 1.6 million. That links into the betting decline story. We'll deal with. We'll come on to that shortly. I just thought that was wow, wasn't it? That is absolutely kind of like ridiculously the drop off a cliff. But yeah, like I said, I'm sure Anthony's got his own thoughts upon that. And like the betting decline stories, the BHA are just saying it's all black market affordability, etc. And I think on the exchange especially, I think that is certainly true.
AK, any thoughts?
Yeah, 100%. Just turnover will continue to decline, I think, just because of the friction with affordability and the option outside the legal market, I suppose. I don't see anything stopping it at the moment, sadly.
No. Obviously at Punchestown, we had wins for 7 British trainers. They had a really good one. Alan King won the bumper. A lot of people were saying it should have been Gary and Josh Moore should have won that because David Maxwell came in for some criticism for his ride on El Kairos. But if people complain about Maxwell, they know what they're getting before they have the bet. So I think that's a bit unfair.
Is it not possible to also to complain to an extent without having a financial stake, where it just does it not make a bit of a mockery of these high grade races when you've got a horse that looks to all intents and purposes like under any kind of professional jockey would win a race, that is consistently undermined by what is in effect like a very good natured kind of vanity project?
Yeah, I suppose, but he's putting his money. I mean, a couple of people text me, and one in particular, he said, "I didn't have a bet, but I suspect they probably did." He said, "You've got to call him out. This guy shouldn't have a license." And but it's like anything, isn't it? I mean, anybody who's ever watched David Maxwell before know if you get into a tight finish, then you're probably going to come out second best. So I don't know what the reaction on course was to it. I imagine it would be quite amusing, but. AK was probably too busy counting his money rather than on the track.
But also, for a Maxwell horse to go off 9-2 in a bumper of that quality, I mean, what prices does Alcaraz go off if it's anyone else? I mean, did you lay him on course, AK?
Top of my head, I'm not sure, to be honest with you. It's just not a story that I paid any attention to.
You were busy counting.
Yeah, I was too busy to be honest with you. Yeah, I don't think it was probably the crowd to care about that, I think.
Yeah, it's and the only other thing, obviously, Mullins had 15 winners over the 5 days. Emmett Mullins had 3 very well backed winners as well, so they kept it in the family there. A very shrewd outfit. I think Anthony might have got caught with one of those punted bumper winners. Yeah, it was just like I said, it's just a Mullins kind of like fest, and the market seemed to call quite a lot of the big races right, Anthony. I mean, was it just one-way traffic against Brighter Days Ahead, wasn't it? Because that seemed to me be the one race where everybody wanted to be with the winner. And
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. We saw a little bit online as well, and yeah, Brighter Days Ahead was just, it probably opened up marginal five on track and very, very quickly went the other way. Yeah, it was to be honest, it was a weird one because I think not that we did anything right here, but it was the winner was a winner in our book on the track, and Brighter Days Ahead was a decent loser. But it was, I just think a lot of that is because people have more recognition with the name, I think a little bit, and if you follow racing and you probably see what the horse did previously. Um, yeah, I think it's just a recognition thing a little bit more than Jay DeGrugy basically. And the market was very, very emphatically against, and that's the way it materialized.
I saw you laid a decent each way bet on El Fabiolo, and the reason why I'm pulling that is, I mean, I think Harry's got some thoughts on this. There was a guy called Neil Rorty on X. He just said, look, the horse that keeps on falling shouldn't really be in the race, and I think you think that's a bit of a slippery slope, don't you, Harry? That kind of reasoning.
Well, yeah, look, I can certainly see it's quite it's a, sensitive one. I think the horse has fallen three times this season over in four starts, which is pretty extraordinary actually. But all I would say is that how do what would be the process by which that was done? Who would do it? Who would get together and say, from the outside, that horse shouldn't be racing anymore? I think people have been referring to rules in eventing, perhaps, where after a certain number of falls, horses are withdrawn or forced to retire. And I just think that's a slippery slope in horse racing. But we've already, a good example might be this committee we have to make sure that horses are ready for the Grand National. It doesn't appear to have particularly worked, at least this year okay, admittedly that's a small sample size, but I would worry. I think you've got to leave the welfare ultimately of horses to the people who are with them every day, and who spend an awful lot of time learning to become trainers, learning about horse welfare. It will be very awkward if anything were to happen to El Fabiolo in another, given that form. But the suggestion there should be hard and fast rules about numbers of falls, or that there should be outsiders deciding when they should be retired. I'm not sure that's a road we particularly want to go down.
Yeah, hadn't fell in the 11 previous starts to those four, and and probably was five, I'd imagine, in running when fell as well. Best of luck if you think that should be retired or whatever. Absolute non-starter.
We should mention Constitution Hill as well at this point, who had obviously fallen twice coming into the week. We were told that he would only travel over to Ireland if he was 100%, not if he was even 98%. And he looked at about 5% when he during the race, ridden by Sean Bowen in Nico de Boinville's absence. Like, Tony, what do we think of the way that a horse that Nicky Henderson seemed reluctant to run for much of the last couple of years, who's now been sent out three times in quick succession, has fallen twice when travelling well in both, and then tailed off last year? Is this beyond? What do we think the future holds, I guess, for Constitution Hill now?
Well, if you listen to Nicky Henderson yesterday, they're just going to back off him and bring him back next year. But it strikes me as the horse didn't want to know, did he? I mean, but the surprising thing was, on the back of those two falls, he seemed to be very, very strong in the market. I mean, I think State Man went off.
It's 1.9 into 1.68 in about the 10 minutes before the off.
Yeah, I mean, State Man was, I think, went off 94 on the exchange. But yeah, I mean, as has been pointed out, I mean, he kind of like cocked his jaw at the start and took a while to get going, and he was never really travelling, was he? I mean, they'll give him a full MOT, but you suspect his confidence is completely shot, and trying to get horses back from those kind of demises is it's not great, is it? But no, But Henderson's done this before. He's brought back Sprinter Sacra from nowhere to win another champion chase, and I suspect this is going to be as big a task for him to get that horse back right.
Yeah, it was like you've just alluded to, super strong in the market, like ridiculously strong. big shorter. I think we were best price do it the day. I think we ended up just being a tick under evens, but bigger than 10 to 11. I'm sure people will love the price, but we were 19 to 20, and we laid plenty of it, and yeah, just super strong. You couldn't really give statement away, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's just one the market got wrong. I didn't see that coming, to be honest with you. Everyone, I suppose, was talking about will he stand up, and will he, or what will happen. I didn't see a performance like that coming. But then we know he's had issues, and yeah, he just seems to be a horse that's just been you perhaps hasn't had the best campaigning. When people think he should run, they don't run him, and when there's question marks about running, they run him plenty of times in a short space of time. It's just a total weird one.
Yeah, perhaps they've succumbed to a bit of kind of like media pressure and media piss taking, haven't they? So
And
I don't
you can
know.
also understand. You can understand. There's like probably just an absolute desperation from Henderson, Buckley, and everyone else involved, just to put everything right this season, just to try and get him winning and scintillating style in Ireland this week, or last week, put Cheltenham and Aintree to bed, and move on. And maybe maybe Hart ruled ahead. Because yeah, certainly didn't look like he was in any way 100% heading into it. We'll move on now, and we're gonna have a chat here. Mainly us just quizzing you, AK, on the dynamics of on-course betting versus online betting. If you give us kind of a brief overview, given obviously you guys are on course regularly, but also have your online offering too.
Totally different. I think chalk and cheese, really. Online, you're obviously competing, I suppose, against the world or the regulated market in the UK and Ireland. You can probably see quite clearly what prices your opposition are at what time and track it closely. You're in full control, really, especially the bigger races. We're in full control. We tend to take the bigger races off feed and bet them slightly differently. And you've obviously got that real-time example of being able to see what everyone else's prices is, basically. The negative, I suppose, is you have a bigger window, I suppose, 24 hours or whatever, and if it's an anti-post race and stuff like that, so you trade in these races when there's less known about fitness, condition. I think was there a grade one on the first day where there might have been 5 or 6 runners and Mullins had everything in it bar 100 to 1 shot, which was any price. So you just like those type of races you have to treat differently as well, because just like has to be somebody who knows more about this than the form book, basically. So you duck and dive as you see fit. The race course is totally different. Bar the first race, you've only got like a 30-minute window between each race. A lot more information in the market. You can't really see what your opposition are doing in real time. So you're kind of trading as you think, with a little look around, and obviously ducking and diving on the bets you're laying. I can have books online that look markedly different to my books on course, to be honest with you. It's and it's not a huge sample, but which is probably shown by that. But yeah, it can be totally different. We trade, I suppose, the lesser races, the non-graded graded races, or group ones or grade ones. We tend to take off feed and price ourselves. The rest we kind of leave roughly on the feed and just duck and dive based on that. Whereas at the track, every price you're controlling yourself, basically. So you've got a lot more. You have a lot more control, but you need to be a lot more on top of it as well. And the way we price a lot of races depends on who's got runners in the race, the shape of the race, what the Eachway terms are. I like betting on the bumpers, to be honest with you, just in general, just because the Eachway terms are probably more favourable to me, and I could be more aggressive with my pricing. Whereas there'll be some races, there might have been a race on the last day that just ended up being a 16-runner handicap, and you'd be betting a quarter the first 4 in Ireland as standard. It's a fifth the first 4 in England, which is obviously worse. But you'd be a quarter the 4 in Ireland. You'd be betting over broke on your place book. You still get people who obviously don't understand. They've been trained to say you're paying 5 places. Don't understand that a quarter the 4 is often much better with good prices. So yeah, you're just ducking and diving, and it's they're totally different, basically.
Just on that, just to kind of, because there'll be people listening who want to press you on what you just mentioned there, because I think it is widely accepted that the more places you can get, the better. In what circumstance is, should people be looking? I know this is slightly separate to the off course on course argument,
Yeah.
just as you mentioned it. Taking a quarter, the 4 rather than a fifth, a 5, a fifth, a 6.
Again, it's an individual example. It depends on the size of the state of the race. It depends on the price you're taking. The price is really important in that equation as well. A quarter to 4, a fifth to 5 in a 16 runner race, 17 runner race, it's probably marginally better to be on the quarter to 4, but that's assuming you're getting the same price. If you're getting a better price, it's an absolute no-brainer. I think all the firms that do this, sometimes they'll do mad extra places. I remember the day Betfair Sportsbook launched, or one of the first days Betfair Sportsbook launched, and they paid, I think it was Air, and it was like the Bronze Cup, the Silver Cup, and the Gold Cup or whatever. And they paid 12 places on those races. There was like 22 runs. But I opened an account and basically loaded it with as much money as I could get into, and I bet every horse each way because you couldn't lose. So like there'll be place terms where you just like you don't even have to know anything. You just need to know the maths behind it.
That's called bonus abuse, isn't it?
No, it wasn't a bonus. It was the standard.
Promotion abuse.
That's called a 24-hour account, I think.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was only going to be 25 hours without those bets anyway. So it's it's kind of like there'll be some place terms where you're just like, well, these are so too good to be true. I have to take these because there'll be a loss leader. But yeah, if you're talking the marginal differences, the Eachway fraction, nobody ever talks about the fraction. It's probably it's one of the most important things. Between a fifth and a quarter can change your return dramatically if you want to sim out calculations. Like it's very, very, very important. So it depends.
Why a question I've been asked to ask is why I think it's on course question generally, not just yourself. Why would you entertain people on course, very warm punters, that you wouldn't even consider opening, giving an online account to? Is it because you can trade around those bets, get rid of it, follow it in?
Yeah, it's kind of you can trade around and get rid of usually because you're kind of there and you're doing it in real time. For me, there's a bit more of an obligation to lay on course, unbelievably, because or lay a good bet on course because they're your prices. You've no excuse, I don't think, really, to not. You shouldn't be turning anybody away on course ever. You can, depending on your liability, you can reduce a stake or whatever. But like they are your prices. I think the difference with online is they're often not your prices. They're a feed price because you've got that many prices on the website. So it's slightly different. You're laying a price where you then look at it after you're asked a bet and going, oh God, I don't like that bet. You're not really doing that on course. You kind of you've set the price yourself initially, so it's slightly different in that regard as well.
What are you doing if someone strides over to you who you know their business, say you don't take their business online, with a wad of cash on a relatively low grade race, and ask for a bet to win a few quid? I mean, is it you take it and you already said to us that you don't generally lay off bets or you don't generally follow stuff in for the most part. Does that shift on course?
Yeah, it again depends. A lot of caveats to all this stuff, but it depends. I just don't like, just in general, what will always put me off, I suppose, is just people coming up. On course is different, right? Because you tend to lay owners as well, right? We can go to Garum Park on an industry day on a Wednesday where it's fairly quiet, and they'll have a load of 18-runner handicaps. And paying spectators, there won't be that many people there. But there'll be a lot of owners there that come and watch the horses. So the parade ring will be fuller than the stand, basically, for an 18-runner handicap at Garum Park. Now, when they all pile out of the parade ring 7 or 8 minutes to the off and then walk towards the betting ring, you kind of, if they're walking past you, you're not laying a bet on the one that's probably not fancied. But if they're walking to you, they've just spoke to the trainer, and you can duck and dive based on, you might not respect people but like if do you know, like it's kind of, you're kind of laying the triers and not laying the whereas on a bigger day where there's 30,000-40,000 people there, the spread of bets is astronomical, and that owner's bet or that smart bet is absorbed in the general business of the. It doesn't even feature in your field book often. It might make a small dent on one of the selections, but on a quieter day, it's the bet you've got in your field book and you've got nothing around it. So you have to trade those differently. If you're trading them the same, you're on a hide into nothing, I think.
Right. Well, from one of the behemoths of sports betting to another, we'll talk about the Bet365 reported sale. This was out in the story broke early in the week, and AKU alluded to that this might be the case, that we'd see rumours of the Coates family selling up when we were talking about the operation closing for business in China.
Ari genuinely knows more stuff about this kind of stuff than me, I think. But I just thought it was very strange. I'd say they've got plenty of money out of China, and to come out of it, there had to be some kind of seismic policy. I don't think it was just an intern, we've decided this isn't a good idea anymore for us. I just thought there was something bigger, and I think that play could have been trying to expand in America or do something in America a lot more, because they've been very, very slow, if anything, in America, and way behind the curve. It's probably the one instance where they have been way off the pace, or there could be another reason. And I didn't think a sale was fanciful, to be honest with you, and it seems to be that way. But I didn't think it was any way a certainty or anything. But I thought it was a lot better than no chance, basically. Just on the back of that, cutting off the tap, which is probably, I'd say it's been quite a fruitful tap.
Harry, what do you make of this story?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean,
You digging around for 9 billion yourself?
Not in the hurry, I'm afraid. I think that I don't fancy going up to Stoke, but it's no. I mean, the point I was going to make is just it would be very interesting to find out to what extent, or if we ever will find out, Denise Coates is still a really key player at 365, because one of the things that might be an issue in selling it is you might feel that she's quite an important part of it, having brought it from famously a porter cabin in a Stoke car park to a £9 billion business. And I wonder if that could be a slight issue in selling it. She's 57, 58 now, I think I read the other day. And there are suggestions that there isn't really an internal succession plan. And that really it's time, if she's going to leave her wealth to the rest of her family, she perhaps doesn't want it all in one business. A bit like all these, aging rock stars who sell their music back catalogue and then buy, timeshares all over Florida because they don't want to leave their great grandchildren exposed to, the music business. So that might well be what's going on here. But I think if I were buying 365, I'd probably want some golden handcuffs, keeping her around for a while, given where it's come from. So I doubt it will be a completely clean break where we suddenly see the back of Denise Coates, but who knows? And the other thing is, there aren't many people that can afford to buy it. There was an article in the Times talking about the various institutions that aren't allowed to buy it for various reasons, antitrust law and kind of not allowed to touch gambling company rules. DraftKings is one of the ones that people are talking about, but apparently they wouldn't have the cash. It would have to be a share for share style deal. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who's in the game. Apparently, slightly strange part of the story is they've apparently upset a lot of merchant banks in America by not including them in their beauty parade, which is slightly strange one. So was it Merrill Lynch or someone has had their noses put out of joint because they've not been included in the possibility of making an awful lot of money from these deals. This deal. We'll see. It's very early days, and but it does seem to be happening. It's not just rumor anymore. The suggestions, some of the quotes coming from banks who have actually been approached by various brokers, does suggest that they are putting the feelers out officially.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you make about the succession plan thing. I hadn't really factored that in, and does make total sense. But I suppose it's the same with all like half independent businesses. Like I've seen it in insurance, just with a friend of a friend's business, and his insurance business was bought out in Ireland, and he was kept around or on the for 2 or 3 years, and he had to stay on and almost earn out that way. And I've seen that a lot with, I suppose, obviously occurs a lot, but where one person or a number of people are fairly pivotal to that growth. But can you imagine? Just can't foresee a situation where they'd be happy with that. It'd probably be quite arm's length. I don't know. But yeah, I get the succession issue. That's
I think you're right about the China thing, because there's a suggestion that ultimately what might happen is that it's floated on the New York Stock Exchange, and you can imagine how that would have gone down in Trump's America. That New York Stock listed on an IPO for a company that was doing grey market business in China would not go down very well. So I'm sure that is why they did it when they did.
Coates' family struggled to find that important person at Stoke City who can just stick around and help them be successful over the last decade or so.
I knew a football comment was coming from you.
get Pulis back.
Yeah.
If they kept Pulis around for 2 or 3 years after he'd been sacked, it would have been perfect. It wouldn't be a mess with him now. Right. On to a story that came out in the Racing Post early last week, written by Peter Scargill on basically betting turnover over the first 3 months of 2025, falling 9%, which is, I guess, okay, not that surprising, but still relatively concerning.
It's not surprising. I think it will continue to fall for the time being. I don't see any shift in policy, and I don't see any shift in that trajectory, that changing course. I kind of look at the gambling industry a little bit at the moment as if you can survive in this market when there's a change of what would you say, a change of plan or on some of the key decisions. I think if I think anyone who can survive with a gambling business in this market is doing pretty well. And it's kind of just about maintenance. It's a little bit about maintenance at the moment for even us. I think it's kind of the headwinds are strong, and if you can stay in business and build a business in these conditions, I think when sunnier climes come, I'm hoping that it'll be okay.
A question to both of you, Anthony and Harry. Is there anything behind the scenes actually happening about railing back on these affordability checks, making it kind of like less invasive and stuff like that? Or is it just business as usual that they're still being asked for? People are still being asked willy-nilly for documents, etc. Is there any kind of like signs that that's dissipating?
Harry, probably better to answer this. I don't want to get into a syntax war, but UKGC have probably said affordability checks aren't in place, but the things that you have to ask for
sound quite like affordability checks.
Yeah, they're basically akin to them. So I don't see that changing in the foreseeable, and I don't see growth in the legal market for the foreseeable.
It's one of the big problems with regulation is where you have to be so careful about over-regulating and minimizing market freedom, is that it's very hard to row back from it. Rules tend not to get unmade. And I think we are probably stuck with something financial viability or affordability checks. I think the other thing that is increasingly, to get very dry on this, but I'll just mention it quickly. I think there's increasing confusion by both at the regulatory level and by operators as to what actually is the difference between affordability checks, source of wealth, and AML checks. They're not the same thing. And I think that there's increasing blurring of the lines. And I just think bookmakers just don't really know what it is that I think it's very hard for them to know what it is that they're supposed to be getting at the various stages. And I just think that gets more and more confusing the more rules you put in. And, the rules aren't prescriptive enough. So they don't tell you get this, get that, get this. They give you principles that you should be complying with, and it's the principles are too woolly, I think, too often. In terms of whether people are pushing back on them, I think people are really fed up with them within the industry. But I think there is a sense that big core is not pulling its weight and pushing, or rather throwing its weight around enough to try and get these changed. There are lots of theories as to why that might be, but we appear to be, stuck with them for the time being.
Yeah, there's probably 3, 4, 5 big power players in the UK and Irish betting industry, and none of them sticking their head above the parapet on this issue. So until
I mean, the reasons for that go across the whole sort of spectrum from, it's in their interests because it'll slowly push out independence, to actually they're terrified because they realize that if they do start making objections, then people will go, well, actually, the reason that these have come in is because some of the things that you've been up to for the last 20 years have required it.
I think there's going to have to be a much bigger light shone on customers who've bet into the black market and had extremely bad experiences for any kind of change to happen. I think that is the biggest, because the anti-gambling people will not acknowledge that their policies are pushing people to the black market. They won't acknowledge the growth of the market, whether it's inadvertently or whatever. There's going to have to be that. I think that the next shift in focus on this is people explain, as we've had for the last. They're struggling to find people these days, but people are explaining the gambling problems in the legal market, and lights are obviously always shone on that. Never a light on, I deposited with this firm abroad and didn't get my money, and I developed a gambling problem this way, and I only did that because I couldn't go through the checks in the UK and I didn't want to do this. And I think there has to be the only way we're going to get a shift in focus here and the truth emerge and stop this downward trend is the light on the black market is going to have to be shone very hard from a consumer perspective, as it is on the legal market, where everything is policed to within an inch of its life, basically.
I think that's right. And I think the other thing that's interesting is that it's not, people think, it's people going to the black market because either they've gam stopped or because they don't want to do affordability checks. It's actually not. It's people who don't realize they're on the black market. The number of people that we get contacted by who've had problems, and I would say 95% of them now are with businesses that you can't get any money out of because they just exist in the ether, more or less. But people think that they're UK operators, which is terrifying. And it's the other side of the coin, which is that it's all very well, putting in loads of stuff that's going to inflict more and more regulatory pressure on the regulated market, but you can't just then also allow businesses to sort of look like they are the regulated market, but comply with none of the regulatory duties, and frankly not pay out if they don't fancy it, because they don't, and there's almost no comeback.
Right, we'll talk now about Nigel Wakefield, unrelated to a previous conversation, but Nigel Wakefield is the travelling head lad for Mick Appleby, who has been banned for racing for a second time for bad behaviour. This is an incident, TC, that occurred back in 2022 at Wolverhampton, where he seemed to take umbrage at 7 ambulances parked in the car park and made his feelings pretty aggressively clear to I don't know his job title.
He's the chief executive of Wolverhampton, I think.
The manager, Anthony Gledhill. And there seems to be, the Wakefield himself has, during the hearing, said to the panel chair, "You've taken away my income for the next month," and the stress caused by this inquiry lasting as long as it did.
Yeah, I mean, I think we had a question from David Brown on this saying, why did it take so long? As you said, I mean, he only got banned for a month last week, and this happened in December 2022. It's obviously he's got previous for this, and if he's come across in the interview with the BHA, as he has done in quotes, then I'm surprised he didn't get more than a month. Don't like to sound like an in-betweeners, kind of like commentary, but he does sound a bit of a feisty one. He's let me just read out a quote. He just said, Charlotte Davison reported him as saying, "My manner has been the same for 60 odd years. It's not going to alter now. I don't pussyfoot around anybody. I have an aggressive tone. Everybody knows that." It's kind of like,
And you just sort of feel, why don't other people run that in criminal proceedings? I like a bit of murder, but everyone knows that about me, you know?
no, I read it. I mean, she's reporting that as what he said, but I don't. It doesn't sound like there's much of a denial there. I mean, I've got sympathy when we have with jockeys who get banned for a month and without pay and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I'd much rather they found ways to not ban people from the sport. It does seem to be a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to almost everything
I
now.
think what he was saying is fine me so I can pay it off gradually rather than you just shutting me down for a month. I imagine Mick Appleby may well protect.
That's probably fair, in fairness. And it shouldn't take 2.5 years for this case.
No.
How is this taking 2.5 years? This is an
I don't
abject
know.
failure for this. This is like a month or two, like the guy says. No way. You're saying Mick Appleby a pay, but he probably didn't like the quote of saying I'm paid a pittance.
Yes, I saw that.
I was just
But
like,
did you
fucking
go
hell.
back to his? Did you go back to his earlier look at his earlier offence, which was seems to have been somewhat, if anything, underpunished for, because he apparently tried to drive a horse lorry into several car parking staff.
Yeah.
Was it Chelmsford? And it led, I think, to the best submission I've ever heard from the BHA, which was at that first hearing. The BHA's view is that at present, Mr. Wakefield is a liability to others when he attends race courses. And this needs to be reflected in any penalty that is imposed. There is no excuse for running someone over or telling several people where to go. I don't think that's quite a false equivalence, isn't it? Running people over and telling them where to go.
I think we've just worked out why there were 7 ambulances in that car.
Yeah, the Wakefield Wake, it's called. Yeah, exactly.
Oh god!
Wow.
It sounds
So
like
yeah, 2.5 years too long. I wish they wouldn't knock people out of the game as sort of the principal punishment as often as they do.
Well,
but
and it's
yeah, I
interesting
don't
that
think he
he
quite gets it, 'cause
specifically
I mean,
says
his stuff about this has taken 2.5 years. That was him giving it to the chair panel after the penalty had been handed down, I think, and he says I would have preferred to have had a fine. And this isn't really a question of your preferences here. This is not quite how it works. So I'm not sure he quite gets it. And it'll be interesting to see. Just be very careful if you see him behind the wheel of a horse lorry. Is my suggestion. Anywhere near you.
Yeah. It's interesting, and there's also a line saying that in the first offence he basically offered to get anger management, which seemingly was never forthcoming, and he's now being made to. So it does seem like maybe that's why they're not willing to give him a payment plan to pay off his any fine. But yes, I mean, it is interesting. I think that the suggestion there being that can't I just have a fine and carry on working rather than having to have the monetary loss and also not be able to work, which seems a fair request in my mind at least.
The problem is, though, of course, is that if you give people penalties in a way that suits them, then you kind of lose the deterrent effect of the penalty. So I think it's not great to do that to stable staff, but
2.5
sure
years is a big thing for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Over everything. How are you taking this long? Like, what are you doing? Who's in charge here?
We don't know what the reasons are, but look, all I can tell you is that they all take too long. All BHA investigations take too long, and I think it'll never happen. But if they were to put at the end of every case the number of hours spent by BHA staff, which is what lawyers do in litigation, basically they tell you what time they've spent on things, and also the period of that investigation, I think it might speed things up and make the BHA a bit more efficient than it currently is, because it's not very efficient in the way that they prosecute these things or investigate them now.
Right then, another story that broke over the last week or so is around Frankie Dettori, who we've spoken about a fair bit in the last few weeks, signing up for he's a new ambassador for Stake, Stake.com, who have been also in the press quite a lot over the last couple of years with their forays into sponsorship and the like. I'm going to tiptoe around this one. But Harry, what did you make of this news?
I hadn't twigged it. This was the same company that Everton had on their shirts,
Yes.
wasn't it? And have they taken
Correct,
it? Do we know if they've taken that down? Did they have to take that off?
They have, yeah.
They have.
I make a pretty strong effort not to watch Everton games.
They'll have to get Chang beer back or whatever that was.
Yeah,
that's right. I mean, Frankie Dettori has entered into a new sponsorship agreement. They've got a separate business called Stake.us, which is a distinct operation which operates differently. I think almost like pool betting in North America to avoid some of the regulatory problems it's had. I think they also sponsor a Formula One team as well. So he's not the first person to sort of jump into bed with them, as it were. But you do wonder whether it's brilliant image in circumstances where they have recently been asked to leave the UK market. But I'm not quite sure what the rules are on whether there could be any issues with him. I don't think he'll be riding with stake written on him here when he comes over. Let's put it that way, because I think that would be a breach of gambling commission rules. But given that they seem to be operating perfectly legitimately in lots of other jurisdictions, I'm not sure there's any real difficulty with this myself.
It's going to sound really stupid, but I'll say it anyway. When you're made bankrupt, is that a global imposition, or is it just in the jurisdiction where you've had an argument with the HMRC?
I think the answer to that is it depends. The jurisdiction of bankruptcy can be very complicated, but theoretically, if he is being bankrupted in here, it should in this country it should be, I think, subject to some exceptions, all his global assets. But he's just signed up to, you pointed out, he's just signed up to this global racing league. He's just entered a deal with stake.com. He does have to start again to an extent here. So this is probably what we're seeing is he's not got very long, he's got 40 years of riding ahead of him as he had when he started out the first time. So he's obviously moving quite quickly to try and make that back.
Yeah, on now to a story with a headline, travel ban for man who tortured women in Highland Dungeon, which wasn't on my bingo card for topics in the racing room. This is a story about Kevin Booth, who ran a tipping line for many years. This is a relatively old story. It was broke back in late February, but we never got round to it. I mean, AK, where to start with this? It's a pretty horrific story about someone who'll be well known to many in racing circles.
When I started off, I suppose, in gambling properly around 2007, 2008, there was a tipping line people in the industry around that time would have been aware of called Isiris, that basically put up bad Eachway selections. Basically, it actually touches on what we spoke about previously around people betting Eachway selections at like 6-4, 7-4, this kind of thing, on bad Eachway races, and being aware of the maths in certain instances for those prices. And Kevin Booth would have been the man behind Isiris, and he would have been aware of that mathematical phenomenon as well, or anomaly. He has been in the news various times, from what I understand, in the last 10, 15 years. There was a story around a Brazilian au pair, which you can Google. He seems to be quite a sexual deviant, basically, who's had a few legal issues around not being able to control himself appropriately around women.
I read the story a couple of months ago. My overriding impression is that Nigel Wakefield should have employed his solicitor to try and get him off here, because if you only get a travel ban in Scotland on the back of what he was outlined in that BBC article in February, it's staggering that he's not doing jail time, isn't it? I mean,
I thought so.
And significant jail time as well. I mean,
yeah,
travel ban, you're not allowed to go outside of Scotland. I mean, and chaining people up in dungeons, and it's stuff of well, it's not obviously it's not comedy if you're one of the kind of like people involved, but it just reads absolutely it just reads like a kind of like spoof, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
No,
And it's not, and it wasn't his first time, was it either? That was the other extraordinary thing. Is that it was there? I think he'd been convicted twice over the years, hadn't he? Yeah,
I had. Yeah, there's been. It was definitely from memory a Brazilian au pair, the first one. Yeah, I'm sure he didn't used to always live in Scotland as well. I think he lived in the UK in England at some point, for one of those. But yeah, very very abnormal behaviour, and yeah, not good.
It's obviously your idol. You'll have to take his picture down from your bedroom now.
I was going to say it's bad. It's a bad day for Eachway thieves, isn't it? A few more bits to touch on. A nice story around the race courses raising £3.5 or £3.3 million for charity in various causes. These kind of range from donations to tickets and other things.
Weighing rooms.
For the last year or so.
Is the charity to build a few weighing rooms for the ladies? Is it?
Yeah, that's a fair point. There are some concerns around the turf at Lingfield ahead of the Oaks and Derby trials this coming weekend, with the course being unable to water. They're hopeful that will be resolved in the coming days, but there is obviously a chance, as has been the case in the past with too much rain. #global warming. The races might have to be moved on to the all-weather should the ground not be suitable this weekend, and the government being warned of the catastrophic consequences for racing as it launches the gambling tax consultation. This is around increasing, I think that's right, increasing the levy aligned with kind of casino betting. Is that right, AK here? For would be the shift, so it's all kind of a one umbrella tax.
Yeah, there's been various things mooted. I just don't think people comprehend what sort of industry they're going to be left with. This is fairly shocking for horse racing. Now, if we're talking about single digit declines, you better get your double digits out. I think it's gonna
That's
go.
what Kevin Booth said.
It's gonna go through the floor, I think. And yeah, listen, I like steak like the best of men, but I usually like mine medium rare. I don't like it spammed all over all my.
You don't like steak as much as Frankie Dettori at the moment. I can tell you that.
Exactly. That was the joke. But yeah, all good. Yeah, no, I think it's fairly. I think it's not good. And don't know, the BHA of all the issues, just really slow on this. They're just not understanding. They're not understanding the impact of this stuff. This should be just mealy-mouthed responses, I think. I think they're just so weak. I think the bookmaking industry, corporate bookmaking responses are just so piss weak as well. Yeah, I just don't see any. I think hope is being extinguished, to be honest with you, and there needs to be some fight back very quickly. It's going to go downhill and maybe quicker than it has so far as well.
That's the rival for Too Busy Counting as the pod title. Hope is being extinguished. Who said we're a negative podcast?
Everybody. On to questions now, and my friend Goody Hugh Racing, who I can pronounce his name. Do on-course bookies suffer from punters ignoring inflation? I still bet the same amount per race on course I did 15 years ago. Maybe I'm just a tight bastard. And this, I guess, this applies for a few things. Like I mentioned this last week with regards to max payouts, where it would seem if a max payout hasn't changed for the last 10 years, then it actually has changed quite significantly. Is this an issue? Like it kind of tracks with my own betting, I guess, where I don't feel like my stake size has increased in that much in the last however long.
It's just something I don't really think about, to be honest. But yeah, maybe so. Maybe people just move up to the next bracket, and if you bet a fiver, you'd now bet a tenner. I don't know. I don't know. It's I don't.
But you've not noticed then that the sort of basically your costs are going up, but income is not.
Yeah.
But I mean that the stakes aren't going up commensurately. Then you haven't noticed that they're not.
Yeah, I've kind of probably not been in it long enough, to be honest with you. I think from my own betting always went up.
Yeah.
But I don't know
As the
about
day went on.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I don't know about the general population. I probably wasn't in bookmaking myself in previous years to notice inflation too much. But you are right. Costs do seem to only go one way.
A similar question here. This is on kind of minimum bets from Adam Swan. Here's an example for the pod. A five minimum bet, sorry, a £5 minimum bet signed 10 years ago should now read £6.80 minimum bet, which you would never do. Would you get away with a £10 minimum bet? Probably not. I wouldn't most days. People tend to bet in multiples of five.
I think he's an on-course bookmaker, isn't he? I think.
It might be, yeah. Yeah, we don't have a minimum bet, to be honest with you, just basically because most days you don't need it because you're never knocked over. On for the first ever time on the Friday of Punchestown, we put a tenner minimum on the card. Just because it was just absolutely manic and you've got people coming up to you trying to pay £2 on the card and stuff. It's just probably costing me money to take the bet. So yeah, we added a minimum in that regard. We don't put minimums on. We're just happy. I think we have a slight responsibility, especially on the not manic busy days, of serving customers who don't want to bet fives and tenors basically. And that's the way we do it. We don't mind.
Derek O'Donnell, Tony, interested to hear if you think the Guineas are suffering in recent years for simply being too early in the season. I know the schedule has it at the start of May forever, but it feels like the Guineas winners are rarely a champion horse anymore. Is it losing its luster as a classic?
Possibly. I mean, the thing about the flat season is it just all the big races just blur into one. We've had just like we got Chester from Wednesday to Friday, and we got York soon. I mean, I think the likes of Aidan O'Brien use bizarrely uses the Guineas as a stepping stone. He had a couple of horses at the weekend that he just said, we're a week or 10 days behind. We'll use this as a springboard for Royal Ascot and the like. So, in that respect, if you got the biggest trainer saying it's not all important, then yes, it is losing some of its luster. Yeah, and I think the Thousand Guineas was the smallest field for a few decades as well.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it when I saw it. I've probably not been following the flat at all recently, and we were talking about get the guineas up on the board and stuff like that, and pulled it up, and you're talking like 10, 11 runners and stuff like that. I was like, where are the rest of the runners? Like I hadn't twigged it was such a small field. Like,
Yeah.
Uh, Nine down. What is the story with interference in the case of a tight finish where the jockey on the winner hits the runner up with a whip multiple times in the closing stages, even if no massive contact between the two? Paul Townend on Jasmine DeVoe catches honesty policy on the head at least 3 times with a whip. Harry, any ideas on this?
Yeah, I mean it is interference to hit another horse or rider with the whip. Intentionally striking another horse or rider is dangerous riding. Careless riding is unintentionally striking another horse or rider where should have moderated the use of the whip because of close proximity of another horse or rider. So it's really the same as any other type of interference thereafter. Does it change the result of the race as a result? You don't often see these given. These rules are not very well drafted, the rules on interference. And an example of that is the difference between intentional and careless riding is the different between what they call accidental and intentional. That's quite a strange concept that you can do something by accident but intentionally, or you can do something unintentionally and not by accident. The rules on this are a bit of a mess generally. But the short answer is yes, it's interference. It's as interference in the same way that other things are. The penalties actually come in under the whip rules, and those change it a little bit, but not in a way that is remotely worth us investigating now. But yeah, it's interference.
I read that. I read that question, and I remember Anthony said he had a big swing between the winner and the second in that race. So I imagine Anthony was applauding the jockey on the winner, waving his whip around willy nilly.
Yeah, it was a big swing. Yeah.
Literally.
Tom, 2 for AK. Do you price up everything on your website, or are there some markets copied from elsewhere? And if a member of staff, if your staff priced something up that you disagreed with, would you overrule them or go with their price? It's interesting. This one you've alluded to it already, but I think kind of a
Yeah,
bit
it's
of
good.
a comment on feeds and how feeds work.
Yeah, that's it. Like it's kind of, would you have the same prices as other operators? Yes. Do you copy them? No. There's kind of a set number of fee providers for certain markets. And yeah, a lot of people just take the same ones, or they'll take the feed and slightly alter it with some kind of a tick up or tick down. Or, for example, you'll see darts prices bet to like 105, 106, and some bookmakers will bet them to 108. It's probably the same feed, and some of the bookmakers betting to 108 are just being worse prices, doing a tick down on each selection, or something similar. We don't copy anybody, but we might have the same feed providers. So you could say they're copying us, but nobody's copying anybody in that regard. Copying doesn't really occur as much anymore. It's kind of just wherever you're getting your prices from has probably shrunk, I'd say. And then we do our own prices where we don't copy or don't get them from a feed, and we take them off the feed basically. So that's that one. The second one is also another interesting question. Do you overrule your staff on pricing or something? If I see something that I think is wrong, I'll say it. Very rarely, unless I think it's, a lot of them are subjective wrong, so I don't really correct or don't overrule on subjective. If something is absolutely wrong, I will say change that price firmly. But
The last time you did that.
Roy McIlroy 8-1 for the Masters.
Yeah, no, that was my that was probably lads telling me to change that price. No, I can't remember, to be honest with you. I can't remember. But what I would do sometimes is slightly passively aggressively. I have an account on our site, a test account, and instead of messaging someone saying, "Can you just have a look at that market? I think you're wrong," I'll put a test bet through so that they see it on come through, and then it just makes them have a look at the market basically. And I actually don't mind if they look at it and then message me and say, "I'm keeping it for this reason. This is why I'm doing it." That's fine. But I'll usually, if I see something I think's wrong, I usually flag it, but not necessarily say you have to cut this basically.
I think there should be a test account where if you beat them, nothing happens. But if they beat you, then you got to take them on out to the pub every month.
Yeah, everyone will be getting fatter, I'd say.
Mediocre Gambler asks, are British and Irish racegoers being shortchanged? Churchill Downs with 14 races on Friday and another 14 on Saturday. And that sounds exhausting. Max of 7 or 8 races on a good day over here. I mean, do we want that?
No.
I think 6 or 7 is optimum. We had 9 at Newmarket on Saturday. Yeah,
9 at Punchestown as well, a couple of times, I think.
I just think it's a bit of a.
9.
Can you imagine 14 races over here? You'd have walking wounded by about 2 o'clock. Lying down for a nap in the ring.
I'm surprised that maybe on the weather you don't get some kind of afternoon and evening days where there can be a churn of audience and with a gap in between, because there seems no reason why you can't. But
they probably, I think that's the way it will go, to be honest. But I don't think it's a positive.
No. And then finally, John Malcolm. Does AK think whoever scored his thesis a 2-2 understood anything about Eachway thieving? Also, had you given up on leads before the late show?
No, it was probably, I've still got it in the house somewhere. It's very, very naively and badly written. But the step.
But you didn't think that at the time.
No, I was just trying to submit it so I could go to the pub. I'd say.
A guy called Kevin Booth marked it apparently.
Yeah. It's very basic, to be honest with you, and but it had the stepping stones for thoughts that developed in the real world rather than in the hypothetical world, I think, which served me well, I think, in general. And had I given up on Leeds? No, just looking at the stats, I suppose we were looking at 2.5 expected goals v 0.5. I was looking at 80-20 on possession. I was looking at 26 shots v 5. I was like,
I was watching it and I'd given up, I've got to say.
I was still thinking there's a chance here. And then I tend to watch these on Flash Score. When I was at the track, and I scared some woman half to death when it said big chance next to Leeds' name for the 2-1. But I was watching it on Flash Score, and I even got excited when it said 6 minutes added time, to be honest with you. So I was still always slightly believing, and it came good.
I messaged you earlier in the week to say just lay the 1.33 and fingers crossed for the double bubble, and it looked with like 35 minutes to go, like I might be able to land both.
I was actually on Bradford Eachway in League Two, and that was the 96 minutes. So
I was on Walsall Eachway, so that's a big swing between us.
Sorry about that. Yeah,
a 12-point lead in January, 17 points clear of Bradford, and what it now looks like an own. Anyway, that's for another podcast. Right. Cheers, guys, for listening. As ever, this has been the Racing Room. Make sure you check out AK Bets and specifically AK's big prices up on site. Loads of big prices across different sports up on there. We'll be back again, or they'll be back in. I'm actually away next week, but the guys should be back in next week, and I'll be back the week after that. So yeah, do check out AK Bets. Enjoy the racing, and we'll see you then. Cheers to the guys, and have a good one.